Payne Lusinger.
Like my ancestors are in this land, and like the land is in me, and it had never occurred to me that that's what this land looked like before. So I'm so happy to see that picture every time I'm in there, and I covet it.
Great. So I think we have most of our people in the have been admitted in.
Oh, that was fast.
Yes, it was quite quick. What a great turnout. Really thrilled that everybody is able to join us this evening. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this online opening of Luke Parnell's exhibition, which is called Indigenous History in Color, and which will be on display at the Bill Reid Gallery of Northwest Coast Art in Vancouver from February 3rd to May 9th, 2021. And this talk is being recorded and will be available afterwards through our website. Just so you know, the gallery is open Wednesday to Sunday from 11 to 5. So if you are in the Vancouver region, hopefully you'll be able to come down and see the exhibition in person. And there's lots of room for social distancing, I promise you. You'll get a really great sense of the exhibition tonight, but it's even better in person, definitely better in person. So my name is Beth Carter. I'm the curator here at the gallery, and I'm really excited to see how many of you are joining us tonight. We are up to 74 people, which is just awesome. That would be similar to what we could host in person in days gone by. But unfortunately, I really had hoped to have Luke here tonight in person to meet people in person, but it's just not possible right now. So I'm pleased to say the gallery is located on the traditional and unceded lands of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And we are so grateful to do our work every day in these beautiful territories. And I'm really thrilled that Audrey Siegel from Musqueam has been able to join us tonight and to welcome you. So I'm going to turn it over to Audrey, and we'll pin her onto the screen.
That's exciting. I'm learning all kinds of new technology things because of Zoom. I want to first raise my hand, thank each of you for taking time and showing support and love and being involved with your presence. And I wish that I could be at the gallery. I'm not able to drive at night right now, so I'm at home as much as I wanted to be there in person and to see that beautiful painting in person. I say, Mitsep Quatwilam at Tanas, Hunt Kaminum Kanaf Tamo, Tanatwell, I Kunishqualwens Quincy Quatsnala, Ham's not going to squeak to meet Sent Humathwiam, Huigden, eat Selena August, Tennessee Lash. In the land, in the language of these lands and the language of my ancestors, the language of the trees and the water, Huntkaminum, I say welcome to the unceded lands of the Huntkaminum speaking people. My name is Schlemtnot, also Audrey Siegel. I'm from Musqueam, and I'm the granddaughter of the late Stephen and Selena August. And I don't say those words lightly ever. I'm really grateful to have had the support, the time to be able to start to learn my ancestors' language again. And any time I get to use it, especially in the line of my work, it really does bring me feelings of great joy. And I want to raise my hands to the gallery, to all who are involved in making this new exhibit possible, especially to you, Luke. I look forward to one day meeting you in person and chatting and checking out your art, and in reading the write-up about this, about the new exhibit. Words like playful and bold, I love both of those, and we need more of that, especially in the times of COVID and in the times of social distancing, and in the times of people really getting an opportunity to like sink into themselves again. Playful and bold are two words that really sink into me and help me feel connected, not just to myself, but to other people. And the connection between oral histories and who we
Yeah, Janice
through
Mazur.
the connection between tradition and the path to contemporary. All the while, we're still who we are. We are our grandmothers, our mothers, our grandparents. We are the ancestors going so far back that they never had anything except for traditional names. We are timeless in a certain sense, and so is art. And that connection of being able to represent ourselves, to represent for our ancestors, and to do it in ways that allow us to be playful, that allow us to be bold, and that allow us to actually be who we are so important and necessary. So I raise my hands to each of you for being here, and to Luke for sharing so much of who you are. And I look forward to checking it out myself. And the song that I'm going to finish this with, it's a working song. I guess I call it the owl song. It's to call in the ancestors, and it's to ground the space. So if you want, close your eyes, think of your own ancestors, welcome your own old ones, ancient ones into your life, into your world, into tonight, and also into the space with the beautiful exhibit that is just opening now. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for making space and time for me. And I ask that the ancestors stay with you, travel with you, keep you happy, and to wrap you up in love, not just tonight, but for all days and for all of the evenings. And I raise my hands again to the Bill Reid Gallery, to Luke, to all connected to making tonight possible. And I'm really excited to check it out myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Audrey. You always have such beautiful things to say. And you know, Luke and I've had a number of conversations about the intangible quality of the storytelling and how important it is to, so you captured those ideas so beautifully. So
thank you. I'm so happy to hear that. It's important to me to represent for not just for my ancestors, but I really like to connect dots, and so that it's not just a perfunctory piece of work. So you know that I'm really here. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now I'm gonna go. I'm organizing my room now.
Well, and you shouldn't eat too much. Audrey is just getting over a concussion, so she should not be on the screen for too long. So it's very lovely that she was able to join us. Thank you again. Yeah. We'll be down to the gallery sometime soon.
Okay, and thank you for understanding.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
have a good night.
So, thank you so much. So, this new exhibition, Indigenous History in Color, features the work of Luke Parnell, and I wish he could be here in person, but we have him online from Toronto. So, but before we begin and I introduce Luke officially, I would like to say that the exhibition is made possible with funding from the BC Arts Council, the City of Vancouver, and the Province of BC. And I would also like to thank Michael Klein from the MKG 127 Gallery in Toronto and Donna Austria and the staff at the AGO for their help with loans and just helping to make this exhibition possible. Really shout out to all of you. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce Luke. Hi, Luke, there in Toronto. And we're so excited to have your exhibition at the gallery, and thank you for joining us tonight. I know it's quite a bit later there where you are, but we thought it would be great if we could have a bit of a general discussion to start, and then we're gonna virtually walk through the exhibition together and chat about the pieces as well. So maybe I can just ask you to introduce yourself in your own way and tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Luke Parnell. My dad is Haida from Masset. My mama, Mishka from Gikolks, and I'm Lux Geeks from Wilps, Gwagans. I grew up in northern BC, and now I live in Toronto. A few things happened in between.
Yeah, I'm curious to how you got from Port Edward to Toronto.
I don't know. I just always, I left home when I was 15. Went back again I left home when I was 15, and then I went back home again when I was 18 because I didn't know how to look after myself. And then I don't know, I've always had busy feet, I guess. I just was always searching for adventure.
Yeah. Did you know you were interested in art at that time?
Yeah, I've always been an artist my whole life. I don't remember not being an artist, to be honest. And I feel like I was encouraged quite a bit when I was young because I was an artist. I think it's because my family were fishermen and cannery workers, and so I think they just sort of enjoyed what I did, so they supported me and encouraged me quite a bit when I was young.
It's wonderful. So I know that in our, so it was just interesting as we were chatting before we started that you went to high school for a few years in Vancouver and actually overlapped with Audrey without knowing it. And then you went north and then you decided to go to school in Toronto? Is that what?
Yeah, I was living in Vancouver for a few years, and then just one summer I just decided to check out Toronto for the summer, and then sort of fell in love with the city, and then I ended up going to OCAD, or it was called OCAD, OCA my first year, OCAD my second year. No, it's OCADU. I studied sculpture there.
And I thought it was quite interesting that you told me that you kind of got interested in conceptual art when you went to Toronto, and that was actually before you started your more formal Northwest Coast art training. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a comic book artist, and so I did a lot of comic book stuff. And then when I went to OCAD, I didn't know what I was going to do at OCAD as far as art goes. I thought artists painted, so I did a bunch of paintings to get in. And then when I got there in first year, they sort of showed us a bunch of like sort of Western artists, and one of them was Alexander Calder, a documentary about him and his work, and a few other ones. And I just sort of fell in love with the idea of like, like having people be able to walk into a room and sort of walk around the art rather than just see it on the walls. George Siegel, that's the other one that whose artwork I really enjoyed.
So that
and the main instructor at the time in sculpture was Ian Carr Harris, and he had a sort of huge influence on my work, most definitely.
So how did you find yourself back to the coast and
well, it was sort of a long journey. Like I finished art school, and I sort of didn't know what to do with myself for like my first year out of art school. I had 13 jobs, and and I did one painting over the whole year. And I remember my cousin Ian, who's my roommate. I remember like I see him like a year later, and I was like, "Hey, Ian, I finished that painting," and he just started laughing, and I was like, "I know, one painting in a whole year." But it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do, and then yeah, and then Ian was apprenticing with Henry Green and Eli Milton, and him were running a tool making course in Masset, and so Ian invited me, so I went over there, and that's how I sort of met Henry, and then I ended up apprenticing with Henry after that in Prince Rupert.
It's wonderful. And Henry Green, of course, is a very well-known Tsimshian carver. So that's a great training that you were able to apprentice with him.
Yeah, and Henry's an amazing teacher too, so that helps.
So now you're really bringing these two practices, the conceptual together with the more traditional carving, and we have some quite interesting pieces in the show that kind of illustrate how those two halves of your practice come together. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that, the things we've talked about before around storytelling and how storytelling is so important in your work.
Yeah, I think it came from when I was apprenticing with Henry. When you first start apprenticing, you're just copying basically, and so I spent the first year just sort of copying, like, or he would just do like half of a piece, and then I do the other half, and then after we did that a couple times, he told me to go look in the museum and like take some pictures or look in a book and look at some different carvings and sort of copy those, and he sort of showed me how to do that. And then after we did that, I was kind of like, he sort of told me in the end, the work's got to, it needs to mean something. Like you have to, it can't be just a mask. It has to have some sort of meaning. And so he's the one who's really told me that there had to be a story involved with it. And he was using all traditional stories. And at the time I was kind of like, because Northwest Coast is so widely appropriated, at the time, I don't feel this anymore, but at the time I thought, well, I don't really want to use traditional stories because I don't want to, they can sort of take everything from us. Maybe we should keep the traditional stories for ourselves. I don't believe that anymore. I think it's hard not to use traditional stories because they're so rich and they're so connected to the art. So at the time I started writing my own stories and creating work sort of based on, that's how I started my career. That's why it started that way, is because when I started looking at contemporary stories of Indigenous peoples and using those in the work rather than traditional stories.
That's super fascinating. So some of those earlier works that maybe we'll talk about after. So one of the things that I think is an interesting connection is and something that we realized when we started talking about this exhibition is your connection to Bill Reid. And I mean, you didn't necessarily have a direct connection, but you've talked about being inspired by him in a number of different ways. And he, of course, also shared many, many traditional stories in his work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you explain some of what Bill Reid means to you?
Yeah, when I was a young person, I had the book. I always forget the name of that book. The main book that everybody had back in the day.
Analysis of Form.
Yeah, so I had that book, and I had a couple other sort of things. But Bill Reid was really the big artist back then, so I really looked at a lot of his work and watched all his interviews, and so him and Robert Davidson as well. I bought a few of his books as soon as they came out and really sort of studied them. I didn't understand Northwest Start then, though. I could look at it and appreciate it and try to do it, but I wasn't really doing it well. Like at that time, I really had to study it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're a huge influence, like in a lot of different ways. Like I remember seeing an interview with Bill Reid, and he talked about how it was really weird. Like he talked about how he didn't know how the art could move forward from what he was doing, or something like that. And I remember hearing that and thinking and disagreeing, like not angrily, like, oh, I'm going to show him, but it was more like, I think it can go further. Like I think he's wrong about that. Yeah, and so that really had a huge influence. Like, I don't even know if I was misunderstanding him. I was quite young, but it still stuck with me all these years. And another thing that really stuck with me too is in one interview they asked why he was so much more successful than a lot of other artists. And he said in an interview, because he really hustled really hard, and he's always trying to get jobs and like networking and all that kind of stuff. And that sort of really stuck with me too over the years. And yeah, so those are really two things that really stuck with me.
And then one of the pieces in the show is directly inspired by Bill and his work documenting and participating in the salvaging, or so-called salvaging, of totem poles from Haida Gwaii.
Yeah, remediation, the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want me to talk about it?
Sure, we could, or should we talk about it when we get to that point?
We can see it.
Yeah, okay. So I guess the last thing is a little bit about the title that we chose for, or you chose for this exhibition, you and Michael, the idea of Indigenous history in color. And it makes me think about, how do we see in color? What does that mean to you?
I think it meant a lot of things. Like I was sort of thinking about like this idea of like, I always think about this idea of like Indigenous history and sort of how it can appear so static, like all these black and white pictures. And I started thinking about like colorization and also just because there was so much color in my show. And I was, I was thinking about that, but it was also just sort of straightforward. Like a lot of my work talks about history or contemporary issues and also history as well. And so this idea of like using color to talk about it. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. Yeah.
It made sense, and maybe we're reading deeper things into it the more we look at the pieces. To me, I mean, it's just so joyous, all the color, having so much color in the gallery right now. It's of course very dark and rainy times in Vancouver in February, and so it's sort of like a indicator that spring is just around the corner. So it adds a lot of joy for us, even though some of the stories and the history you're sharing is pretty heavy. So with that, I think it's time to actually let people see the works. And what we've got is, just as an aside, people are welcome to put questions into the chat box if you have any questions for Luke, and we'll try and probably handle some of those questions towards the end of our talk. I have my faithful assistant Alia is going to be walking through the gallery, filming the pieces so that Luke and I can discuss them, and you'll be able to see them on the screen. And we're going to start with the piece that is right behind me, which is called Bear Mother. And it's a really fantastic work. And maybe Luke, would you like to, let's get the image up on the screen first. Can Alexa pin? There we go. Great. Can you go in a little bit more? Super. So I think this has a great story behind how it was created.
Yeah, this piece wasn't actually intended to be seen like outside of the virtual world. And so as you can see that it's squares, and the reason it's squares is because each square was like, I wanted to do like a piece leading up to National Aboriginal Day a couple of years ago. And I wanted to do something that was sort of on my mind at the time. And so I did each square individually, and I showed one all the, I guess it's 16 days leading up to National Aboriginal Day. And so in the original one, each square has, you are a colonist in a different language. And I was sort of thinking about this idea. The idea behind the piece was that, like, a lot of sort of like, people think of colonialism as over, and somehow we're like post-colonial. And I just wanted to sort of make a statement that we're not post-colonial. We're, right in the middle of colonialism, and people come to this country that they're not like, they're also colonists, just like the original Canadians were, or the English were and the French were. And I was sort of trying to make that point with this piece. And so, like I said, I did that on Instagram like every day for 16 days up until National Aboriginal Day. And then I sort of just forgot about it. Like, I thought it was a really fun project, and it was something I wanted to do for quite some time. And then I had the exhibition at MKG 127, and it's sort of like two galleries. There's a front gallery and a back gallery, and the back gallery had the other two main pieces. And I thought I wanted to put something in the front window that'll be really colorful and that'll sort of, people will be sort of interested in. So I removed the lettering that I had put on there, and I created this piece and got it printed. And so it wasn't really actually even intended to be sold as a print. I just wanted something for the front window. And so it's actually 59 inches by 59 inches. It's like a giant print. It's the biggest they could do at Smokestack Studios here in Hamilton. Yeah, and you know, and we ended up doing an edition of 5. We sold 2, so there's still 3 more we can do. And it's so funny because, like I said, I didn't intend it to be anything but virtual, so it's only done in 150 DPI. And so if you get up close, you can see like the pixelation a little bit. And I couldn't fix it. I don't know how, but like I said, it was never really intended to be a print. But it's really cool because actually you can't see the pixelation if you stand back a little bit. So. And also the reason I did this piece too is because I wasn't really good with color, and I really needed to learn. And there's an artist who talked about you know, the best way to learn something is just to do it. If you want to, you know, just do it, and then you can talk to people about it because they'll ask you about it, and you'll, you know, and it'll be easy to learn. And so I decided, well, I'm just going to do it. And so I started off just doing my own color combinations, and then I realized that like I need to learn like color theory better. And so I started like looking at like still images from movies and like picking colors from a still image, so that because the colors all balanced in a still image, right? Like somebody chose all those colors, and so they work together. And so I started doing that, and then I started having a bit of fun with that. And then I started looking at comic book pages or splash pages from comic books and stealing the color from that and like putting it together the same way it was on a comic book page, like. And so we're just trying to find a balance in each square.
So you went full circle back from your early interest in comics and cartoons into, yeah. I think it's quite interesting too. I mean, we were talking about storytelling. This is the story of Bear Mother, and this is an ancient narrative from Haida Gwaii, and one of Bill Reid's favorites as well. So we have a number of different depictions of the Bear Mother story in the gallery. Because you've talked about that it's the story that's really important. It's less the object and it's more the story and the importance of the story carrying on. So that ephemeral, intangible nature of the story or of the piece versus the story. And so by having it a little fuzzy and a little bit meant on Instagram kind of underlies that.
Yeah, definitely. I also like, now I'll do everything in 300 DPI because, you know, you never know what's going to happen with art, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the time I wasn't thinking about it.
The other interesting thing too is that Bear Mother, of course, the story of the Bear Mother is a real story about change and transition and acceptance into other societies and all of those sorts of things. So this whole idea of labeling it with the colonizer and really questioning the colonial forces through this story. It helps if people know the story, but it brings a whole other dimension to it.
Yeah, definitely. And the Bear Mother is a story that it's just a story that's always been a part of my life. Probably because of the Bill Reid work. But I've seen so many artists like tackle it, and it's just it's one of the reasons that I started using traditional narratives in my work again, because I just really wanted to. I was like, I really want to use that story because it's just such a great story. And a lot of my earlier work dealt with transformation, and so that's another reason that it really, like, just the idea that the bears like would take off their skin and they'd look like humans underneath, like that. That's really part of the story that stuck out to me.
Mm-hmm. Somebody is asking if we could share the Bear Mother story. Would you be up to just telling a super short version of it?
Sure. Off the top of my head, there's a few different versions. So basically, there's 2 girls berry picking, and one of them steps in bear shit, and she starts like screaming about bears and how awful they are, and so there's some bears nearby, and they get offended, so they like kidnap her away. And then she goes, and then when she goes to live with the bears, like I said, the bears look like bears, but then when they get to their village, they take off their skin and they look like humans. And and she falls in love with the bear prince, and she has 2 babies. And then her brother is looking for her the whole time. And so he finds her, and in one of the stories I read, he kills the bear prince, and he takes the girl back to his village with her two children, and one of the children wants to go back. So the one of the children goes back to the bear people and becomes the chief, and the other one stays with the humans and takes the bears as his crest. Yeah.
Good work. It's a long, complicated story. So
Yeah, there's different versions. Like I'm just sort of Cole's notes version.
So with that basic information, people can do a little research to read the story in more detail. Okay, let's. Anything else you'd like to say about that piece?
No, that's fine.
It's a great story, and it's a story that when we do education programs at the gallery, people just love hearing that story as well. So let's move on to looking at Neon Reconciliation Explosion, and Ali is just going to move over there. And this is also this is really the huge piece. If we thought this one was huge, this is the huge piece in the show. It's 7 feet by 12 feet approximately. And there's a great story of how this wonderful work came together as well.
Yeah, this is a piece where it was the year of reconciliation, and I'd been thinking about I was sort of like struggling with reconciliation. Like what does that actually mean? Like, but I want to like sort of do some sort of research and try and understand it. Like, and so I'm not like a writer. Like, I mean, I write creative writing, but I don't write like academically. And I teach studio. I don't teach like art history or anything like that. So I knew I didn't want to like write something. I didn't want to write a paper. I thought I'd find a way to explore the issue as an artist. So I started thinking about it. And then throughout the year, I got an opportunity to do a outdoor art show, a 4-day art show, art festival in Kensington Market called Home Way Home. And so I was talking with the curator, Rafi Gandalson, and he was sort of talking with me about being in the festival. And I was sort of thinking maybe I'd do some sort of painting and just sort of have it there for people to look at. And he was sort of like, well, maybe we can do something more interactive. And so I think that he intended me to like just paint in front of people and just talk to them sort of about what I was doing. And so, but I was like interactive, and I went like full on. I was like, well, I'm going to have people painting. Like I want to do something with this. And so then sort of like, I knew I wanted to tackle reconciliation. So the idea sort of just came together like about a day later after talking to Rafi. And so I got this idea to, the way I would explore reconciliation is I would just make this house front design, and I had all these pieces of Baltic birch plywood cut up 16 inches by 16 inches approximately. And I drew a butterfly house front design on all of them. And the reason I chose the butterfly was because with Nishkas, when we do clan dancing, they call up each clan to dance, and then they'll say butterfly, and then that's sort of people who don't have a clan, like one of the 4 main crests. And so I sort of thought that was more sort of welcoming in a sense. And so I did this, and so the festival came, and I had all these like panels drawn on, and I had a rough frame there so we could sort of like staple it on there. And I bought all these paints. And it's so funny, like I only had the neon by chance. Like I asked a friend of mine to come down, and he's like, I'll only come down if you buy neon paint. So I bought the paint, and then he didn't show up. So I'm glad I did now. I mean, that's Daryl. Anyway, so yeah, so when people would come through, I'd ask them if they want to do painting, and most of them would be like, sure. And so I'd give them a panel, and I'd say to them, this is your, like, here's the, there's the paintbrushes, there's the paint, here's a panel. You can paint anything you want on it. I'll ask you to respect my lines, but you don't have to. It's your painting. All I want you to do is think about what reconciliation means to you, and then paint it. And so, yeah, and it was super successful. Like we had so many people come down, and some people were terrified though. They were like, oh, I don't want to paint, but they'd hang around and watch. Like you could tell they really wanted to contribute, but they didn't feel comfortable in their skill level, or just, doing art in front of strangers. But it was pretty successful. And I invited people down as well, like artists and friends. as well as like random strangers. And that worked out really well too, because if people see people doing stuff, then other people want to do it. And yeah, it turned out really amazing. The only drawback for me was that I wish I had hired someone to change the water and mix paint, and so I could talk to everybody. Because one time I really got to talk to people was when it was slow. And then so I could look at the panels of when it was slow and I could know who painted it and I could tell their stories. Like I talked to them, and I wish I had a story for all, 43 of them.
Wow.
Because it got so busy sometimes there was like 12 people and all I was doing was like changing water and mixing paint, and I wasn't talking to anybody. Which yeah, in retrospect, I would love to have had a story for each single piece, because each single piece is a story. And the nice part about this exhibition is that when I first showed it at MKG, that's the first time I got to see it put together. So I put it together for that exhibition. And so in many ways, it's a brand new piece. And so I haven't had time to really just like sit with it and like understand it. And for this exhibition at the Bill Reid, I've been doing a bunch of interviews, and I was talking with someone and they were asking me like, what do you understand about reconciliation now? Like, what do you think the people thought? And I started like trying to think of an answer, and I said something, and it's, I was like, oh, that didn't feel right. Like, and then I realized like afterwards that like the answer to that question is right in front of you. Like the document like is there, like the painting is the document. That's, people were painting with the idea of what is reconciliation. And if you want to know how they felt about it, look at the painting. And that's why, and each one is individual, like they're all done, except for, one was done by 5 people, but all the rest were done by, is someone just sort of trying to understand that question, and they did the painting. So in many ways it's a document.
It's very, very impressive. Could you talk a little bit about the one panel that you saved back for yourself?
Yeah, so I saved the door for myself, the one right in the middle, and that was tough for me because when we were doing the 4-day thing, I had all these ideas about what I was going to do. I was going to carve some figures and have them coming out of it, or have them poking out or something. And then over the year, they had like the Colton Bushy and Tina Fontaine trials, and after that, I just really lost faith in reconciliation. And then so I didn't know how I was going to finish the piece because because I asked, because it was such a like joyous piece and there was so much color, and also, I asked people to be honest about how they felt about reconciliation, and they had fun. Like it was sort of the event was really fun. People were joking and laughing and painting, and I was like, well, I don't want them to think that like I had this ulterior motive where I was gonna like, sort of like, I always say gaslight them, where I was gonna like say something really serious with this joyous piece. And so it took me a year to actually finish it. And then I realized, I asked them to be honest about how they felt about reconciliation. So I have to be honest about how I feel about reconciliation. And so I struggled with, once I decided I wanted to, that was the reason why I lost faith in reconciliation. And I wanted to sort of, but I didn't want to use Tina Fontaine or Colton Bushy. Like I didn't want to like, feel like someone look at it like, oh, you're just using them. Like, so I really struggled with how to like insert that story into the piece. And so all I really did was I just carved their initials on that little beam you can see right there. And again, it was important that I reference them because that was the reason why I lost faith in reconciliation. But I also feel it was important. I didn't want to do like portraits or anything like that. Like I just felt like that would have been, like I said, they had such tragic ends. I didn't want to use them sort of in their afterlife.
Well, I think it really fits in with your other work, this sort of the minimal conceptual, the empty doorway and the blankness behind the doorway sort of shows that there's still a lot of work to be done, right?
Yeah, and everything in the piece is intentional. It's intentionally like, that you can see the chipboard behind it, and you can see the sort of sticks, the cross beams coming up in the top and the side. And like I said, I just want to show that it was a facade, like the reconciliation of being, I felt like it ended up being more of a facade than anything real and long lasting.
So I'm glad that you talked about it being a joyous piece, because it is an incredibly joyous piece. But I think when you combine it with the title, and then you have this, the title is Explosion. So, and then what you just said about the facade and what's behind it, We also have the sketch. I don't know, Alia, maybe you can show the sketch, the original sketch that you use, so that people can also have a chance to see uh, the beautiful design you made, and then how it was reinterpreted by the
Yeah. I should have sent you the original sketch.
yeah, well, it's close to the original sketch. Great. So the next thing is a series that is on loan to us from the Art Gallery of Ontario. This is a new acquisition. Congratulations that you have these works now in the AGO. And we're so thankful that they were still willing to lend them to us. It's a series of 7 paintings, and I just find the information and the story that goes behind these paintings really interesting. So maybe you can tell us a bit about that story.
Yeah,
So
the series.
many stories.
Sorry, what's that?
So many stories to share.
I know, right? Yeah. So the name of the piece is recontextualizing the deconsecrated. And this was a story where I'd done some research on like the exhibition history of Northwest Coast art, and I wanted to stick with, and so I decided what I would do is I would appropriate for each exhibition, I would look at work in the show, and I would create a painting sort of based on work in a show or based on the curatorial statement for the exhibition. And so I chose 7, originally 8, but I chose 7. And yeah, and so I started with Arts the Raven and ended up Beat Nation. And it was really about trying to understand how the curation and criticism, or it's a mixture of curation and criticism, had changed over all these years. And so I also appropriated text from each exhibition. And so what I did was I created these texts based on the curatorial statement and the criticism of the exhibition. And I didn't add any of my own words. I just edited them together to make one statement. And to narrate, so when you read them, it's really weird because it's like, because you can tell it's different voices talking. And like I said, and the reason I did this is because I just wanted to sort of understand the change from then to now. And so from Arts of the Raven, where it's mostly non-Indigenous people sort of recontextualizing, ethnographic pieces into fine art. And over the time, and there's sort of like this deconsecration of the work, where you're taking like sort of like really sort of spiritual and culturally important pieces and selling them like they're fine artworks, without a history. Like that's sort of the modernism in Northwest Coast art, like trying to create a new art form with no history. And then then over time you see that sort of change, like throughout those 40 years, where in the 80s you see not so many big exhibitions in Northwest Coast art, but a lot of smaller ones and more involvement by Indigenous curators. And you sort of see this sort of change, and where people are sort of starting to tell their own stories through curation, till you get to the Beat Nation, where it's a young curator and a lot of young artists, and they're sort of telling their own stories and creating this artwork that is fine art, but it's not like fine. It's not modern. It's not modernity. It's an art form with a history, with both the history of being fine arts in Canada, but also the traditional history from way before. And so you see that sort of different change over time. And I just found it really interesting. And I enjoyed painting them because I was able to hire a couple of assistants to help me paint them. And so that was really amazing. And you're looking at Beat Nation right now. And the reason I chose the My Little Pony, is because one of my assistants was really into My Little Pony. And so I wanted to draw something that she'd have fun painting.
Well, the series is quite amazing, and the text, we made them as big as we could. Your vision, maybe talk about your vision for the text to balance with the work.
Well, I mean, it wasn't, originally I sort of wanted them to be, originally I was going to embed the text right into the painting. Sort of like those old religious paintings. But then I just felt like it was too much. Like it would have sort of, the text would have become artwork and it would have been mostly unreadable. And I was like, I think the text is important, so I don't want to put them together instead. And so I decided to do them as a didactic panel, and the same size as each painting. So when I first, well, not first, the second time I showed it in Ottawa, I printed out these giant text panels that were exactly the same size of each painting. And that was fine, but also, and then we showed it as little didactic panels next to the piece. So it looked like a museum. So they look like our gallery labels, but then when someone go to read them, they're not. Like they become sort of these weird, I always say they're sort of like surrealist poems in the sense that I didn't write anything. I just sort of put the words together.
We've got one question. Somebody was interested in the challenging tradition painting with the cross in it and wondering how that came to you.
That was actually from the cover of the book, Challenging Traditions. That's a book. It was a weird exhibition catalog, for sure. I just found it odd because the name of the exhibition and the catalog was called Challenging Traditions, and the book is basically just a series of artist statements by the different artists in the show, and every single one of the artists, like none of them were challenging traditions. They talked about like honoring traditions and moving traditions forwards, and so there wasn't this like, it wasn't like this battle with tradition, like to make something new. It was more like they were all sort of like just moving forward, like they're bringing the traditions forward in time. So I always found that title sort of weird, provocative.
There's quite a few of these exhibitions have catalogs that go with them, and if you're interested, you can look them up find them at your local library or.
Yeah, it's an amazing collection of artists though in the exhibition. So the catalog's worth getting. A lot of amazing artists.
So each piece that you painted is inspired by either works in the exhibition or some sort of interpretation of the works in the exhibition, right?
Yeah. It just depends on the piece. Like if I found some of the work in the exhibition really interesting, I would use it in the painting. And other times I just would read the curatorial statement and it would sort of inspire an idea. Yeah. And some of it was from experience too, because I've seen a few of these exhibitions live, like the Down from a Shimmering Sky. I saw that at the McMichael Museum. And I don't know if you get it right there, Down from a Shimmering Sky. And I saw it at the McMichael Museum, and I think it was 225 masks or something like that. And at the McMichael Museum, they were so compact together. And I was like an art school student at the time. And I remember like just thinking like they were too crowded, like none of the masks had room to breathe. And I thought you couldn't, like none of the masks can breathe, like they're just so like jammed together. And it really sort of made me sad. And so when I did the painting for this one, that's why I let, like these are three different masks that tell the same story. And so what I did was that's why there's so much black space in that painting, because I wanted to give them room to breathe.
Okay. And that exhibition was originally at the Vancouver Art Gallery.
Yeah.
But if you're interested in masks, there's some amazing masks in that show. But that's really neat about the painting that you created. You hadn't told me that story before.
No.
Do you want to talk about it? Sorry, say that again.
I was saving it for the opening.
Do you want to give details about the other works in the series, or should we go look at Transforming Image?
Yeah, we can look at Transforming Image.
Okay, that's the one at the end. Gonna go over there. So
the Transforming Image. Yeah, so this was the series of paintings was originally 8 paintings, and with this one, but I had to make the difficult decision to remove this from the series, because the series was really about like prominent exhibitions of Northwest Coast art, and the Transforming Image was a really important book for me, and it really like changed the way I look at design and I call it like the Bible for me. Like I really loved it. And so that's why I did the painting. But when I researched the exhibition, it wasn't really a prominent exhibition. It was more like a book launch. And I still kept it in there. Like the first couple times I showed it, it was in there. And then finally I was like, oh my God, I gotta take it out. Like it doesn't match the series. Like it's gotta stand alone. So I took it out and, and actually I just had it on my wall in my kitchen. And, when I did the talk to the AGO, you guys saw it and like, you gotta have it. So and so like I said, I just had it on my wall in my kitchen and, and I don't really usually like to put my own art up on my walls because, I've seen them already. And also I have a tendency to move on once I'm done a piece. Like I'm always sort of thinking about the next piece when I'm done. And so I don't actually think about my work so much after I'm done it. Mm-hmm. That's why it can be hard for me to talk about work because I just don't think about it when I'm finished.
When you're done. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons we were interested in having it here, and we're showing it beside, but slightly separate, so it's not interrupting the flow of the other 7 pieces. But of course, the book Transforming Image was written by Bill McLennan and Kenny Duffett, and sadly we lost Bill this year, and he was such an important influence and curator at the Museum of Anthropology, and so important to many people on the Northwest Coast. So I thought it was lovely for you to talk about how important this book was to you and to show your beautiful piece, and also just as a bit of an homage to Bill.
Yeah, and he was a really great guy. Like I met him a few times, and he always made you feel special when you talked to him, right? He always like come up and talk to you, and you always felt like he was so friendly and like just amazing person. And yeah, just like every time you call, you're like, hey, Luke, how you doing? And and like it was just like, wow, that's awesome. And the first time I met him was actually with Henry. We were looking at the totem poles at UBC. Mm-hmm. Like we were looking at in the Haida village, they're looking at, and also heard this bang on the window, and there he is inside, like Henry. He like ran over, opened the door, and let us in, even though the museum was closed, and it was really cool.
Yeah. Bill was very, very special. Yeah. Great. Well, now we can go and take a look at your film and the totem pole that goes with it. And this is maybe we can just talk a little bit about remediation and remnant 1.
Yeah. So remediation there's a film made in the 50s, and you put the original title, which was Totems. Mm-hmm. Or
Totem.
When I saw it when I was a kid, and it stuck in my head, and I remember seeing it. And then I watched it as an adult, and when I watched it as an adult on the CBC website, it was called Timeless Totems Skangwe, which is the title I've been using and I watched it as an adult, and I remember watching it, and like it was so condescending, and they made so many statements about how they had to rescue the totem poles because they were basically what they sort of insinuated that it was because there was no more Haidas. And even though like the fishermen that brought them out there were Haidas, and they always sort of made all these statements that sort of separate those Haidas from the Haidas who carved the totem poles. Mm-hmm. And so I just stuck, it's like, what's that saying, stuck my craw or whatever. And I was like, I have to do something to like react to this film.
And can I interrupt for a second just to make sure people understand it was Bill Reid narrating the film?
Yeah.
Though he was Haida, so it's a little bit of, but it was done in the 50s. Yeah. Yes. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. And that didn't, he has a very lyrical voice, so that didn't help. Because he had such a fine speaking voice. It's a beautiful film. I love it. Even though it bothered me, I'll still watch it sometimes. Because it's history and it's important. So I decided to make a film reacting to that film. And so I decided I would carve my own I would design a totem pole meant to be cut in half. Because in the original film, they cut the totem poles into pieces and then shipped them down south. And so I thought, well, I want to like do a piece where I like carve a totem pole, and I'll use my crest, which is the eagle. And my main sun crest is beaver holding a broken stick. So the bottom is the eagle and the top is the beaver. And so I decided like I would carve it, and I ended up like getting a Canada Council grant, and then I got this residency in Pointe Claire, Quebec at Stewart Hall, and it worked out perfectly because I was able to carve it in Montreal for 7 weeks. And then I was making this film the whole time, and I was able to I talked to my friend Sean Arden and Pascal. So Pascal filmed me in Montreal, and Sean filmed me in BC. And Sean also co-produced the film, which was super amazing because I couldn't have done it. So because I knew when I started, like if I was going to make the film, I'd have to hire filmmakers to work with me because I don't know anything about editing or filming or anything like that. I just watch a lot of movies and I sort of wanted to like make this film. And so it was really a collaborative process because I would say like, well, these are the shots I want, but also any shots you want to do, we'll do those as well. Like we'll do as many as we can. And so I had this like plan. I did these storyboards. I had this like plan to do it. And so we filmed the carving in Quebec, and then I had this backpack so I cut it in half, and then I put the top on the backpack, and I sort of carried it. The film was like carried to the train station, take the train across Canada, which I actually did, and then I sort of walk around Vancouver with it, and I'm sort of walking around like places that were important to me. You wouldn't know it like just by watching the film, but like I walked past. I was at the time I was with Windsor Gallery, and they had these iron like monoliths out front, and I thought it'd be awesome to like walk by those. I've got like this, monolithic artwork on my back, and I'm walking past these monoliths. Well, I walked back there because, like I said, I had a relationship. I walked past the Native Education College because there's a totem pole there by Norman Tate, and I sort of wanted to stop and take a look at that because that was a big part of my life too. I went to school there back in the early '90s. I walked past Emily Carr when it was still under construction, and yeah, and then went down to Kitts Beach and so on and so forth. Then I made my way over to Vancouver Island and sort of walked around Victoria, and then went out onto the trail, like onto the Juan de Fuca Trail, and sort of did filming there. I'm sort of telling you guys behind the scenes, so hopefully you'll still be able to enjoy the film. And then I decided to burn it. And the reason I burned it was because in the film, they're basically sort of insinuating that the reason they're salvaging the totems is because culture is dead, and they're just trying to like save the remnants of it, so that people in the future can like study it. And so my film was a reaction to that film, and my film was basically saying the culture isn't dead. And the totem poles are just, I always talk about this difference between intangible and material. The totem poles are just material. Like we can carve new totem poles. They're not even meant to be last forever. They're meant to last for 100 years or so. And then they fall down, and they let them go back to the earth, and the people carve a new one because it's the culture that's important. It's not the material. Like the material, I mean, the material is important, but the culture is more important. And that's what I was sort of trying to get through in my film, was that even though I like burnt this eagle, I can carve another one. There's lots of other carvers you can carve eagles. There's lots of people who can tell these same stories because the culture is vibrant. And so, yeah, and that was sort of the whole idea behind the film. There's one little side note. So in the film, there's a line that really like got under my craw where Bill Reid says, oh, he's like, oh, the white men are all growing their beards while the natives use their electric razors. I was like, oh, so for the film, I grew my beard for the film because I was like, I'm the native and I have a beard. So whatever, man. And so, yeah, and it was fun. And as far as the sculpture goes, that's the bottom half of the sculpture that I made. It's a beaver. And the charcoal is actually the ashes from the eagle that I burned. And so someone was like, well, where's the broken stick? And I was like, it's there, man. It's there. It's in the ashes. That's the broken stick. Like that's the top half of the totem. So the totem's actually all there. It's just in different states.
We've shared the link to the film on YouTube for anybody who's wants to see it before they come down to the gallery. I will say I love the film. It's 12 minutes long. It's so beautiful, and I can watch it over and over again, and I don't get tired of it at all. And it becomes more and more meaningful. But I love having it on display with the other half of the pole and the charcoal, because it just completes the story. The two go so beautifully together. So I'm thrilled that they're here in the gallery.
Yeah, and it was a really great experience too. Just the making of the film was really fun. Me and Sean went out to the Juan de Fuca Trail. I can't remember which beach it was, but you can drive down there. People surf there, and so we were there, and we had like coolers full of like pop and like coffee, and we had like steaks, and other people were hiking and they had like, like freeze dried food and stuff, and we're like frying up steaks. It was pretty funny.
Well, I have to say I'm pretty impressed because I don't, even though you weren't literally carrying it across the country, it looked pretty heavy on that backpack.
Yeah, it got pretty heavy. It was all filmed live. Like it was all filmed over 4 days, and it's 40 pounds. It was not too bad, but it got heavy. Like just, and the scenes in the movie aren't like, a lot of them I had to do over and over again.
Uh-huh.
Like, so there's like, I'm walking up the trail. I probably walked up the trail like 5 times. And so after a while, and so it's done in real time. So you can sort of tell I'm starting to get real tired by the end of it.
Applauding. Your beard gets longer. Great. So I'm just going to, so Luke, that's the end of our tour of the show, and it's so beautiful. It looks great in the Bill Reid Gallery, and thank you so much for working with us to have it here. We're wondering what you're working on next.
Well, at the moment I'm teaching, so I don't have a lot of time to make art. I'm doing a lot of digital drawing. So if you follow me on Instagram, I'm sure we can put the link to the Instagram in the chat, maybe. So if you follow me on Instagram, I'm doing a lot of digital drawings now. And those are mostly just for fun. Some of them will end up being prints, but mostly just for fun, because teaching takes up quite a bit of energy, like emotional energy. But luckily I didn't have to teach in the fall, so I was able to make a lot of art. And so I have a show right now at the Varley Gallery here in Ontario, and it's a brand new piece. It's a triptych, 3 box drums, and it's called Repeat the Chorus 3 Times. And it's sort of like the main idea behind the piece is this idea of like we carry our culture with us, but we also carry our traumas. And so there's 3 of them, and they act as sort of a balance to each other. Like one is sort of hopeful and sort of talks about culture, and then the other one sort of talks about this sort of trauma that we carry as Indigenous people. And the center one is sort of the balance between the 2. And unfortunately we're in pretty heavy lockdown in Ontario, so I don't know if people will get to see it, because you really need to see it live to understand, because there's the box drums, but then there's carvings inside the box drums that really, photographs don't really do it as far as the impact of the piece.
You did put some images up, but it's very hard to see the interior. So I hope you'll get to show. And Luke has another amazing work that also includes boxes and things in boxes called Phantom Limbs, that's at the National Gallery, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's quite well documented. So we probably don't have time to talk about that here in detail, but are there any burning questions? A lot of people are just asking want to connect with you or take a look at your Instagram. So we've shared that online. And also the list of the exhibitions that you've talked about. So I think what we'll do is we can put up that list of exhibitions that are reflected in the piece on our social media, and then people can take a look online to learn more about those individual exhibitions and the books. Anything, Luke? That was so much fun. Really appreciated chatting with you, and we got to cover so many different things. I hope that we can have you out in April. We're hoping that Luke will be able to come out in April and give a live artist talk. But if that's not possible, we're going to do another artist talk, and maybe we can talk about more of your work and some of the other things that you've done in your career during that talk. And we're also working on putting together some sort of workshop in March. So keep an eye on our social media or sign up for our monthly newsletter to stay informed about what's happening. And I just want to thank you again, Luke, and we will be talking soon, I know. And I please invite everybody to come down to the gallery.
Yeah, come check out the work. I mean, I actually don't really do a job of talking about my work. Like there's always more to it than I say, because I just, I don't think about, once I'm done the work, I don't think about it. So I hope people will come in, the work's there. You can sort of, the work's there. You can see what it is, even though I might not have mentioned things, because I don't know. I don't enjoy it that much.
Well, you surprised us. You did a great job, and but I do agree. You know, like what you're telling is just little tidbits about the work, and then when you see it in the context of the piece itself, you go, "Oh, now I really understand what he was talking about." So it's definitely work worth coming down. And I think Luke is always, you know, his creative brain is always pushing on to the next new and interesting thing. So I really appreciate you revisiting some of these works from a few years ago and helping us understand them and learn more about you and what you're doing art-wise. So it's been really great. Thank you to everybody for joining tonight, and enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Luke, I have a question.
Oh, wait, there's a question.
I'm a student over at UBC and I'm like just doing my bachelor's right now for education, but I was wondering what made you want to pursue your master's?
The reason I went after my master's is because I made a piece called A Brief History of Northwest Coast Design. And that was based on an article called The Processes of Decolonization by, I can't say the name, Pokia Lanawi, I think. And so I made a piece based on this article that I'd read. And so A Brief History of Northwest Coast Designs at the National Gallery, and it's 11 planks that make up a design. And each sort of plank represents a different stage of colonization and decolonization, sort of makes a circle. And so I did that piece and I realized that I wanted to start using more research in my work. And then I realized I didn't know how to do research. And so I talked with Diane Pugin at OCAD, and she said, Luke, if you want to do your mastery, you really have to have like an idea about what you want to study, like what sort of questions you want answered. And so I realized that like, if I want it, and if I do my master's degree, then it'll give me an opportunity to sort of study the art form, but also, you know, I could learn how to do research as well while I'm doing it. And so I actually got to explore. You can find the paper online. I mean, it's all right. Yeah, it's called I remember what it's called. It's in the Emily Carr website, but it's basically what we talk about, this difference between intangible and material. The convergence of intangible material, I think it's called. I wrote it a long time ago, so. But yeah, it was mostly because I wanted to learn how to do research, is why I did my master's degree. And also just really explore my practice. Because the nice thing about doing a master's degree is you know, you can spend time like asking your own questions. You don't have to do like in your bachelor's, you have to take all these different courses that may not sort of tie into your practice. But with the master's degree, you get to sort of explore that. The convergence of intangible and material wealth. That's what it's called.
It comes to mind. So Luke, in his artist statement in the show, he talks about how his work is really based on research, and that he basically ends his statement by saying his artwork asks questions but never answers them. So leaves us all hanging or exploring ourselves. Yeah.
Everyone answers.
Thank you so much for the question. And last chance, if anybody else has a question, type it into the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask, as Jessica did. I think that's it. I think everybody's overwhelmed with the amount of information we've got already. So thank you so much again, and we will please come down to the show, and thank you, Luke, and we will talk to you soon. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks for coming out.
Oh no, I accidentally.
Thanks a lot. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, Luke.
Good night.
All friends and family.
Lovely.
This is your mama.
Excellent.
Bye now.
People are slowly departing.
Yeah, that's funny.